How's it going, guys? Critical Fish back with another video today, and I am taking a look at the adventure I just experienced in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, if you don't already know, this definitely belongs in a museum, but it also belongs in your game collection. And I'm here to tell you why, because I had a great time with this game. I think if you've played on PlayStation 4, if you've played on Xbox, if you've watched any of the Indiana Jones movies that are considered critically perfect, you should take a look at Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I'm going to be covering the physical copy of the game. I'll be talking about my prior experience with machine games. And I will also be just explaining all the different important elements of the game, whether that's combat, puzzle solving, storytelling, adventure, you know it. I'm going to be talking about all of it without spoiling too much. I'll wrap it up with a personal impressions of the video game and tell you what I'm looking forward to next. So let's start off with the physical edition of the game. You can't see it in perfect quality here, but it is excellent looking. The disc itself has the Indiana Jones whip on it, and just great. The cover art on the front looks awesome. You get to see a great picture of Indiana Jones himself. You see the sidekicks, you see the mysterious characters, you see the villains, and even one or two of the locations that you're gonna go to. If you don't know much about Critical Fish, I love to collect the best of the best video games, and if they're available physically, I'm gonna do that. So this definitely is one that I can appreciate and I approve of keeping in the collection. One note that I will say is that the actual disc of this game does not contain the game on it. You have to still download a large update from the internet to even play it. But in today's world, that doesn't bother me so much. I know I'm gonna get a little bit of criticism for that, but as long as I get to have something to physically represent the game, I'm pretty happy, but some people are going to complain about that. So let's take a look at the game. So Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a first-person action-adventure game where you're playing as Indiana Jones. You're going between different locations to find artifacts and also prevent the villain from taking all those artifacts. That's generally the story of Indiana Jones regardless, so I'm glad it's pretty basic, but it's easy to follow. The main gameplay hook of this game is that you're exploring different areas, you're using the whip, you're utilizing various tools like a torch or a lighter or different throwable objects that you can use to solve puzzles, fight enemies, or find secrets. There's a lot of great cutscenes and storytelling within the experience, so I highly recommend if you do play this, that you do complete some of the side quest objectives and hidden quests, because there's a lot of hidden dialogue and character moments that maybe will just make you chuckle or appreciate the experience on a deeper level. So now knowing that that is the core experience of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I'm actually very happy about what Machine Games did to design this game. I was kind of expecting an Uncharted clone or a Tomb Raider clone, in the sense where you're playing as a third-person adventure perspective. You're solving puzzles, you're doing very linear objectives, and there's not much thinking going on. It's just a very basic cookie-cutter experience. But I wasn't expecting the game to feel this unique, You can look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's obviously the guys that did Wolfenstein. And if you've played Wolfenstein before, maybe that's very similar. But from my experience, I've never played a Machine Games game before. So I walked into this going, oh, okay, this is what Machine Games first person feels like. This is how you interact with the environments, like picking up random items and throwing it at people to make them ragdoll. Using a whip, you climb up different surfaces. Even level exploration is very different than what I would expect from something like Uncharted. There's a lot more exploration that you do as the player rather than just being told, hey, go to this checkpoint or run to it as quick as you can to get to the next objective. This is much more open-ended, up to you, and you kind of determine what the story looks like for Indiana Jones. So with that summary of the game and machine games, I want to go deeper into the various elements that make this game. I'm going to start with story as the first element because it's Indiana Jones. It started as a film series. You've got the 3 classic original trilogy movies, and they build off of Indiana Jones as a character as well as his experience as a professor. He goes on an adventure to find some treasure, and that's pretty much where Indiana Jones comes from. So this game follows that very closely. You start off at the college, something happens at the college that makes Indiana Jones go out on this adventure. You find side characters that Indy has previously known and also meets for the first time. You'll meet the villain pretty quickly, and you'll explore a lot of different areas within the game. The one difference is that because it is open world in a way, and you have player freedom, you do get to explore these areas on your own, hear what Indy thinks about these areas or characters, and you get to find the secrets of these areas as well as side quests, like I mentioned before. And I think that level of depth just makes the video game experience of Indiana Jones way more interesting than I thought it would be. For instance, there's this one side quest in the later stages of the game that makes you reflect on Indiana Jones as a character. He is very much perceived as this very strong, outgoing, adventurous, kind of tough dude. And there's a side quest that really exposes his weaknesses, his traumas, and he gets afraid. And you don't see that too much in the movies. If you do, it's very brief and kind of pushed aside to make sure that he's the action hero. But there's moments in this game where you can see those types of moments, and the one that really did that for me was that side quest that I just mentioned called Lost in the Past. If you play the game for yourself, I really hope you experience it and go out of your way to play it, because it actually built on the character of Indiana Jones for me. I also want to say from a story perspective that the way the cutscenes are directed with the various voice actors and mocap, it's amazing. This is one for one the same experience that you would get from watching an Indiana Jones movie. Maybe there's some weird hiccups here and there because it is a video game. They aren't real people. But for the most part, this feels like I'm watching like a classic Indiana Jones movie when it does get to those story moments. It somehow beats out even some of the movies for me, like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I would say this is on par with the original trilogy in terms of it being like a good, canonical, well-acted Indiana Jones story, which is crazy. I'm very happy with the story of this game. Let's move on to the gameplay. I think that going first person was definitely a risk because most people like to look at the character that they're playing as. You look at Zelda and you're playing as Link the whole time, but you see Link doing all these cool actions. You look at Kratos from God of War and you see him go into rage mode. With Indiana Jones, you are first person putting on the hat in this game, and you're first person punching and whipping and reading books and solving puzzles. And it does make it more immersive, I won't lie. But I think I could have gone either way. I dig the first person elements of this game, but I'm not sure if I would like third person more. So I'm pretty neutral on the first person perspective. Now, in terms of the actual gameplay, I detailed out that it is semi-open world. You have player freedom. You find tools to use throughout the world, and you do get permanent upgrades. You do meet characters for each area that you go to. There are side quests. There are secrets, and overall, you have a pretty full experience with this game. I think that the exploration elements of Indiana Jones makes the game. If you are straight shotting the story in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, you are not getting the full experience, and I highly recommend that you do go out of your way to be Indiana Jones, have those moments of debrief where you're not just fighting enemies in a fist fight, or you're not just looking through a cavern. Maybe you're just walking down the street in one of these small little cities or towns, talking to the different characters, listening to the different music that's playing in the air. Some of the best moments in Indiana Jones is when we get to see him talk to other characters that he's not familiar with. Maybe he'll speak their language for a moment or two, or he'll do certain gestures to respect their culture. That is all present within this game, and doing that as Indy in first person is very cool. I love it. In terms of the puzzles, there's quite a few. The game does have a general dungeon structure for the big storytelling moments of the game. This can include different temples that you enter, various caves, maybe even secret doors or rooms in a bigger building. And they all involve puzzles. You could be using the whip to swing across gaps, or yank a chain, or hit an enemy, or, cause a water pipe to break, something like that. And there's a lot of interaction with the puzzles in this game. They're not too hard to solve, but it all comes together pretty smoothly. And I'm happy that there is a lot of puzzle solving in this game. There are also environmental puzzles where you'll have to climb over things, bring an object to another point. Maybe you'll have to rope swing down a certain section of a city to get somewhere, or you might have to unlock a door with a certain key. There's a lot of variety when it comes to the puzzle solving in the environment, and I'm glad it's there. It just enhances the experience. Another type of puzzle that I didn't mention were the ones that are written within the books and notes that you find scattered throughout the world. This is very expected, and sometimes it does come across as a little bit lazy, but as a reader and as someone who invests time into the lore of the world and understanding the characters, it is fun to see how puzzles are integrated with the lore. The next topic I want to talk about is the combat in the game. And I think this is where my neutral opinion on the first-person perspective of this game comes into play the most. I think the combat is great, for the most part. From a first-person perspective, you're expected to punch enemies and whip them. That's pretty much it. You get the occasional items to throw at the characters, but the majority of the combat comes from punching and whipping. For the most part, it feels pretty good. There's even haptic triggers on the PlayStation 5 controller that make you feel like you're punching, or you're really putting in some effort to throw in these swings at these Nazis. The whip is utilized in a couple different ways. You can aim at the character's legs, you can aim at their arms, you can even hit weapons out of their hands. I do think that the combat does feel a little bit weak. When you can avoid the combat in this game, that kind of tells you something. You should want to fight as many enemies as you can. I think part of that is because the game encourages you to go into stealth mode for a lot of different sections. And when you do manage to screw up a stealth section, you are forced to fight a ton of enemies at a time. Maybe that's where some of my neutrality comes from, the feeling of the combat and the first person perspective. But overall, I think it does justice. There is some pretty funny moments too, where you can get a unique animation for knocking out an enemy with your hands or the whip, and it's always in good classic Indiana Jones style. That pretty much wraps up my overall thoughts for the most important factors of this game. But I do want to give a couple more personal opinions on the feeling of the game. I was someone that wanted to go into this with a fresh experience, not knowing what the game was about, not knowing what the combat was like, not even knowing the story, or if the game was reviewed well or not. I just wanted to play Indiana Jones. And from start to finish, and even to platinum ending, I was very impressed with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's not the most exciting video game you're gonna play this year. It's definitely not the most innovative game either. But as an overall experience, it's pretty similar to what you would expect from a semi-open world story game. But a lot of small surprises come in from all these different angles. Whether that's gameplay, whether that's quality of cutscenes, unique dialogue options, cool, memorable puzzles, or even funny moments with the combat. There's enough variety here and heart to make this feel like a worthwhile experience. And I personally really enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So far, out of all the games that I've played this year, this is probably the best one. It's not the one where I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, this is game of the year, guaranteed winner. But it is one of the games that I'm that was a whole big thing that I did and accomplished, and I got to see it all for myself. And for that reason, I'm really happy to own and have played Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And if you haven't played Indiana Jones and the Great Circle before, but you have loved and experienced the movies before, this is no question. You got to get this game on sale and play it for yourself. This is pretty much like having a fourth movie in the original trilogy, because it does take place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, which is super cool. The way that the story is tied into that as well. There's little hints and teases across the game to point to that, but it's awesome. I will say I am excited for the DLC as well. I didn't realize that this game would be getting a story expansion for another section of the game. I'm not really sure how that's going to turn out. I have no doubt that it's going to be on par with what the base game already did. Maybe it'll give some more gameplay elements or storytelling. I don't know what to expect, honestly, but I'll be there to play that as well. One more bonus funny thing that I have to mention though is that because I played Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I got PlayStation Plus to play Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings, which is a notoriously bad reputation as an Indiana Jones game. But I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed it, and I even got the platinum for it. So it was fun to see that story, see how some of the gameplay compares to the Great Circle as well, and get a pretty simple but easy platinum under my belt just for a side game that I wasn't expecting to play. That's gonna wrap up my first Critical Fish review on the channel. I'm very happy that this is the first one that I got to showcase on my channel. Expect to see more reviews come out on the channel, but steadily over time. That's gonna be it for today, guys. Take it easy and have a good one.